Station Administrator Vrelik had been having a perfectly normal morning until the complaint landed on his desk with the digital equivalent of a loud thud. He stared at the holographic display floating above his tentacles, reading the words 3 times to make sure his translator wasn't malfunctioning. Nope, still said the same thing. A formal grievance filed by no less than 7 different species, all claiming the same absurd violation, unsafe demonstration of impossible physical capabilities causing psychological distress to station personnel. By the ancestors, Vrelik muttered, his skin shifting to a confused shade of purple. What in the 12 systems is this supposed to mean? His assistant, a young Quilnari named Tep, scuttled over on his 6 legs, antennae twitching with barely contained amusement. You haven't heard, Administrator? It's the human, the one from the new diplomatic mission. The human. Vrelik's eye stalks drooped. Of course it was the human. It was always the humans lately. Ever since their planet had joined the Galactic Council 3 cycles ago, his incident reports had tripled. What did they do this time? Eat something that should have killed them? Befriend a predator? Tell one of their so-called jokes that nobody understands? Oh, this one's special, sir. Tep's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his people. Apparently, Lieutenant Marcus Webb decided to go for his morning exercise routine in the high-gravity training section. Vrelik felt his 3 hearts sink simultaneously. How high? 5.2 standard gravities. The administrator's tentacles went limp, and he had to grip his desk to avoid sliding off his chair. 5 point. But that section is clearly marked. Only species with reinforced skeletal structures and enhanced musculature are permitted in zones above 3 gravities. The human should have been crushed. Should have been, yes. Tep pulled up security footage on the wall display. But, well, you might want to see this for yourself. The video began playing, and Vrelik watched in growing horror as a human male, wearing nothing but some ridiculous tight fabric covering his torso and legs, casually jogged through the entrance to Training Bay 7. The gravity indicator in the corner of the feed clearly showed 5.2 G. The human should have collapsed immediately. His bones should have snapped like dried Kelthian reeds. His internal organs should have liquefied. Instead, Marcus Webb stretched his arms over his head, bent down to touch his toes with surprising flexibility considering he should have been a puddle of organic matter. And then the absolute madman started running, not struggling, not crawling, running. His feet pounded against the reinforced deck plating in a steady rhythm. Sweat began forming on his skin within the first minute, which made sense because his cardiovascular system was probably screaming in protest, but the human just kept going, lap after lap around the circular track. How long did he go? Vrelik asked, his voice barely above a whisper. 43 minutes, sir. Then he did something he called push-ups and sit-ups for another 20. After that, he walked to the station commissary and ate approximately twice his body weight in protein. Vrelik pulled up the list of complainants. Let me guess. Everyone who witnessed this filed a report? Not everyone. But yes, the 7 species who were using the adjacent training facilities all submitted formal grievances. The Horthax delegation says they were attempting to complete their monthly strength assessment when they saw the human through the observation window. Their champion, Grakthor, apparently dropped a 50-kilogram weight on his foot and had to be taken to medical. Because he was startled by the human, because he stopped mid-lift to stare, sir. According to the medical report, he said, and I quote, "The soft flesh demon runs where mountains would break. How can we call ourselves warriors when pink things mock gravity itself?" Despite the absurdity of the situation, Vrelik felt a twinge of sympathy. The Horthax were proud beings, 7 feet of muscle and chitin evolved on a high-gravity world themselves. To see a species that looked like they could be snapped in half by a stiff breeze outperforming them, that had to sting. What about the others? He asked. Tep scrolled through the complaints. The Felnari observers claimed their meditation session was disrupted by disturbing displays of biological impossibility. 3 Quellan students say they're now questioning their entire understanding of physics and require counseling. The Micron trade representative insists the human must be enhanced with illegal technology and demands a full investigation. And oh, this is my favorite. The Vaxid priest says the human is clearly possessed by chaos spirits and should be exorcised immediately. Vrelik rubbed his eye stalks, feeling a headache forming in all 3 of his brain lobes. Has anyone actually asked the human how he did it? Oh yes, sir. Security Officer Plenthal questioned him right after he exited the training bay. Would you like to hear the recording? At this point, why not? The audio played, and Vrelik heard Plenthal's nervous voice, the Quellan's translator adding a slight mechanical echo. Excuse me, Lieutenant Webb. We need to discuss your recent activity in Training Bay 7. Oh hey, Plenth. The human's voice was cheerful, energetic. How did he sound energetic after exercising in 5 times normal gravity? "What's up, buddy?" "What is up, Lieutenant, is that you just spent nearly an hour in a 5-gravity environment that should have killed you. Multiple witnesses have filed complaints. Can you explain how you survived, let alone exercised?" There was a pause, then the human made a noise somewhere between a laugh and a cough. "Wait, you're serious? Guys, that's adorable. Look, Earth's gravity is about 9.8 meters per second squared. Your station standard is what, around 8? So 5 times your standard is only about 4.1 times Earth gravity. Yeah, it's tough. Definitely feel the burn, but it's not impossible. We've been training astronauts and pilots in high-G environments for centuries. But your skeletal structure," Plenthal sputtered. "Your species has no exoskeleton, no reinforced bone plating, no secondary support systems. Dude, we've got endoskeletons with bone density that can handle quite a bit, plus muscle groups specifically designed for load bearing. I mean, I wouldn't want to live in 5G long term, that'd probably cause some health issues, but for a workout, it's like wearing a weighted vest. Really heavy weighted vest. Whole body weighted vest. Look, it's excellent resistance training. This is not normal. Normal's relative, pal." The human paused, and Vrelick could hear the sound of drinking, probably rehydrating. "Hey, you guys have that new 0G gymnasium opening next week, right? I've been meaning to check that out. We had these great facilities back on Luna where you could really push your acrobatic limits without gravity getting in the way." The recording ended with what sounded like Plenthal making a strangled noise and abruptly cutting the connection. Vrelick sat in silence for a long moment. Finally, he looked at his assistant. "Tep, in your opinion, is the human violating any actual regulations?" The Quilnari consulted his datapad, mandibles clicking thoughtfully. "Technically? No, sir. The high-gravity training bays have warning signs but no species-specific restrictions. They're available to anyone willing to accept the risk." Lieutenant Webb signed the standard liability waiver before entering. He wore appropriate exercise attire. He didn't damage any equipment. He even cleaned up after himself and properly logged his usage time. So these complaints are essentially saying what? That they're upset the human didn't die. I believe they're more upset that their understanding of biological limitations has been shattered, sir. Several of the complainants are from warrior castes or athletic backgrounds. Watching a species they considered fragile outperform them in extreme conditions is psychologically challenging. Vrelick's skin rippled through several colors as he processed this. He'd been a station administrator for 15 years, had dealt with countless interspecies disputes, territorial disagreements, trade conflicts, and even that memorable incident with the Dravlian ambassador and the sentient fungus. But this was a new kind of headache. Right. He straightened in his chair, tentacles organizing themselves into a posture of authority. Draft a response to the complainants. Inform them that Lieutenant Webb's actions were within regulations and that high-gravity training facilities are available for use by all species at their own risk. However, he paused, thinking. Also send a polite request to the human diplomatic mission asking if they could perhaps consider using training facilities during off-peak hours to minimize cultural shock. Consider it done, sir. Tep turned to leave, then hesitated. For what it's worth, Administrator, I watched some of the humans' entertainment broadcasts. Apparently they have an entire sports competition where they run 42 kilometers, in Earth gravity, for fun. Vrelick's eye stalks drooped again. Please stop talking. Yes, sir. Alone in his office, Vrelick pulled up the complete file on humanity. The Galactic Council had compiled extensive data on the new species, and he'd skimmed it when Earth first made contact, but he hadn't really studied it. Now seemed like an excellent time. Home world, Earth. Gravity, 9.8 millis quantrude, higher than station standard. Atmospheric composition, 21% oxygen. Aggressive. Surface conditions, extreme variation including deserts, frozen wastelands, humid jungles, volcanic regions, population distribution, every single environment mentioned, natural predators, everything, natural prey, also everything, evolutionary pressure, apparently existed in a state of constant danger from both megafauna and microorganisms. Then he reached the section on human biology and felt his skin turn a disturbing shade of green. Skeletal system, 206 bones designed for both flexibility and impact resistance. Can heal from fractures within weeks. Muscular system, over 600 muscles capable of both fine motor control and explosive power output. Can increase strength through repetitive stress, a process they call working out. Cardiovascular system, 4-chambered heart capable of increasing output by up to 300% during stress. Can sustain elevated activity for hours. Respiratory system, highly efficient oxygen extraction allowing for extended physical exertion. The list went on, and on, and on. Humans could survive injuries that would kill most species. They could eat foods that were toxic to others. Their immune systems were so aggressive that they frequently attacked their own bodies by mistake. They had a built-in chemical warfare system that produced poisons to fight infections. They could voluntarily enter a state called fight or flight that temporarily removed their natural limiters, allowing them to perform feats of strength that could damage their own bodies but might save their lives. By the ancestors, Vrelick breathed. They're all insane. Their entire species is biologically insane. His communicator chirped. He almost ignored it, but the priority tag indicated it was from the Galactic Council itself. With a sense of impending doom, he opened the message. It was from Council Liaison Threndok, a Sarkellian, whose species was known for their logical approach to problem-solving. The message was brief and to the point. Administrator Vrelick, we have received reports about the human incident on your station. Before you attempt to restrict their activities, please be advised that Earth has formally requested standardization of training facilities to accommodate their species requirements. This includes high gravity, extreme temperature, and endurance-based installations. The Council has approved this request. Specifications and construction guidelines are attached. You will need to inform your station population that such facilities will be added within the next standard cycle. We recommend sensitivity training for staff. Good luck. Vrelick stared at the message, his three brains struggling to process the implications. More humans would be coming. Facilities would be built to accommodate their ridiculous biological capabilities. His station, his peaceful, orderly station, was about to become a hub for creatures who thought exercising in bone-crushing gravity was a fun morning routine. The attachment included architectural plans for the new facilities. As he scrolled through them, his skin cycled through colors so rapidly that Tep, returning with afternoon reports, became concerned. Sir? Are you experiencing a medical emergency? Tep. Vrelick's voice was hollow. They want to build a swimming facility filled with dihydrogen monoxide. Do you know what that is? Isn't that a universal solvent that causes corrosion in most metals? Yes, humans swim in it, for recreation. They also want a facility they call a sauna, which heats users to temperatures that would cook most species alive, and something called an ice bath which does the opposite. Apparently both are considered relaxing. Tep's antennae drooped in sympathy. I'll prepare the station-wide announcement. Yes, please. Vrelick turned back to his displays, already composing the message in his mind. And Tep, cancel my appointments for the rest of the day. I'm going to need to meditate, or drink, possibly both. As his assistant left, Vrelick pulled up the security footage of Marcus Webb's run one more time. The human was smiling, actually smiling as he ran in conditions that should have crushed him into paste. And according to the file, this was considered normal, average human behavior. Somewhere in the depths of the station, Lieutenant Webb was probably planning his next workout. Maybe he'd try 6 times gravity. Maybe he'd decide to see how long he could hold his breath in vacuum. Maybe he'd attempt to befriend one of the station's security drones and teach it to play something called basketball. The really terrifying part? Based on what Vrelick had learned today, all of those scenarios were entirely plausible. He pulled up the Council's information database and began searching for everything available on human culture, biology, and history. If he was going to survive the next few cycles, he needed to understand these beings better. Much better. 3 hours later, he closed the files and sat in stunned silence. He'd learned about persistence hunting, where humans would chase prey for days until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. He'd read about mountaineers who climbed peaks where the oxygen was so thin they literally died and were left as landmarks. He'd discovered recreational activities called parkour, free climbing, cliff diving, and something absolutely demented called wingsuit flying. There was an entire category of human behavior labeled extreme sports that seemed specifically designed to court death in creative ways. And all of this was considered entertainment. Vrelick's communicator chirped again. This time it was a direct call from Lieutenant Webb himself. With a sense of fatalistic inevitability, the administrator accepted the call. Hey, administrator. The human's face appeared. That same cheerful expression plastered across his features. I heard there was some confusion about my training session today. Just wanted to clear the air. Make sure we're all good, Lieutenant Webb. Vrelick tried to keep his tone neutral. Your actions were within regulations, though they did cause considerable distress to other station inhabitants. Yeah, I figured that might happen. Look, I get it. We're the new kids on the Galactic block, and I guess we do things a little different. I've been reading up on station protocols, trying to be considerate, That's actually why I called. The human paused, running a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture Vrelick had learned to recognize. Some of the other humans in the diplomatic mission were talking about setting up a weekly group run. You know, help with morale, team building, that sort of thing. We were thinking maybe we could reserve one of the training bays for a couple of hours each week. We'd keep to ourselves, wouldn't disturb anyone. A group run, Vrelick repeated slowly. How many humans are we discussing? Oh, just the 23 of us assigned to the mission. Well, 23 who are into running. A few prefer cycling or swimming, but we figured we'd start with something simple. 23 humans, running. Possibly in high gravity. All at once. Vrelick made a decision. Lieutenant, I'll approve your request on one condition. Name it. You allow other species to observe if they wish from a safe location, behind shielded viewing ports, with medical personnel on standby. Marcus Webb laughed, the sound genuine and warm. You want to turn our workouts into a spectator sport? I want to reduce complaints by normalizing your species' capabilities. If the station population becomes accustomed to seeing humans exercise, perhaps the shock will diminish. Huh. That's actually pretty smart. Exposure therapy, basically. Sure, we can do that. Might even be fun. Just, maybe warn people first. I'd hate for someone to faint and crack their head open because they saw me doing burpees. I'll include appropriate disclaimers. Vrelick paused. Lieutenant, can I ask you something? Shoot. Why? Why push yourself so hard when you don't have to? The human's expression softened, became thoughtful. You know, I've been thinking about that since I talked to Officer Plenthal. For us, I guess it's just part of who we are. Our ancestors didn't have claws or fangs or armored hides. We survived by being stubborn, by pushing harder, running farther, thinking faster than everything trying to kill us. That legacy doesn't just disappear because we're in space now. He grinned. Plus, honestly, it feels good. That burn in your muscles, the sweat, knowing you pushed your limits and came out stronger, that's addictive, man. Makes you feel alive. Vrelick found himself understanding. Just a little. Every species had their quirks, their evolutionary baggage. Humans just happened to be shaped by a world that wanted them dead, and decided the appropriate response was to laugh in its face and go for a run. Thank you, Lieutenant. I'll have my assistant contact you with the scheduling details. Awesome. Hey, Administrator, thanks for being cool about this. I know we're probably a pain in the tail for you. You have no idea, Lieutenant. No idea at all. After the call ended, Vrelick sat back and allowed himself a small moment of what humans might call dark humor. His station was about to host regular displays of controlled insanity performed by beings who thought pain was motivational. The worst part? He was actually starting to respect them for it. His communicator chirped once more. He glanced at it and saw a message from the Horthax delegation requesting a formal meeting with Lieutenant Webb. Apparently Champion Grakthor wanted training advice. Vrelick's skin flickered through amused shades of orange. Well, that was unexpected. Maybe, just maybe, this wouldn't be a complete disaster after all. Then again, knowing humans, there was probably another complaint coming any minute now. 3 weeks after the incident, Vrelick had developed what humans called a nervous twitch. It started small, just a minor spasm in his left anterior tentacle whenever someone mentioned the word human in his presence. Now it had progressed to full-body color fluctuations that his medical officer insisted were stress-related but couldn't quite explain. The weekly human group exercise sessions had become the station's most attended spectator event, surpassing even the Quilnari concert series and the zero-gravity acrobatics show. Vrelick had installed additional viewing galleries around Training Bay 7, complete with cushioned seating, refreshment dispensers, and emergency medical stations that thankfully had only been used twice. Both times because viewers had hyperventilated, not because any humans had actually gotten hurt. That was the part that kept Vrelick awake during his rest cycles. The humans never got hurt. They pushed themselves to limits that should have resulted in catastrophic biological failure, and then they just recovered. Drank some water, consumed alarming quantities of protein, slept for 8 hours, and did it all over again. Currently, he was reviewing the latest batch of reports while trying not to watch the live feed from Training Bay 7, where Lieutenant Marcus Webb and his team were demonstrating something called circuit training. His communicator buzzed. Tep's face appeared, antennae vibrating with barely suppressed excitement. Sir, you need to come to Observation Deck 3 immediately. What happened? Did someone file another complaint? Quite the opposite, sir. You really need to see this. Vrelick hauled himself out of his comfortable chair and made his way through the station corridors. As he approached Observation Deck 3, he heard something he'd never expected to hear on his orderly professional station. Cheering. He entered the deck to find it packed with beings from at least 20 different species, all pressed against the viewing ports or huddled around holographic displays showing different angles of the training bay. The noise was incredible. "What in the 12 systems is going on here?" Vrelick demanded. Tep appeared at his side, mandibles clicking rapidly. "Champion Grakthor asked Lieutenant Webb for training assistance 3 weeks ago, remember?" Yes, I approved the request. Cultural exchange, mutual understanding, all that." "Well, sir, apparently the lieutenant designed a customized training program for the champion. Today is his final assessment." Vrelick looked at the central display and felt his skin go pale. In the training bay set to 5.2 gravities, Champion Grakthor of the Horthax was running. Not the slow, plodding endurance jog that his species typically managed in high gravity, but an actual sustained run. His chitinous legs pumped with surprising speed. His breathing was controlled, and most shocking of all, he was smiling, standing at the edge of the track, wearing one of those ridiculous human exercise outfits, and holding a small device that Vrelick assumed was a timer. Lieutenant Webb was shouting encouragement. The audio feed crackled to life. "Come on, Grak, you got this. Last lap. Push through the burn. Remember what we talked about. Control your breathing. Steady pace. You're doing amazing." The Horthax champion rounded the final curve and crossed a marked line on the track. The timer in Webb's hand beeped, and the human let out a whoop of celebration that echoed through the bay. 15 minutes. 12 seconds. "Grak, my friend, you just shattered your personal record by 3 full minutes. How do you feel?" The massive warrior bent over, hands on his knees, breathing heavily. When he looked up, his expression was one of pure joy. "I feel, Lieutenant Webb, like I could challenge the storms of my homeworld and laugh. This is incredible." The observation deck erupted in applause. Vrelick spotted members of the Horthax delegation in the front row, their usually stoic faces showing what he'd learned to recognize as pride. "Tep," Vrelick said slowly. "How many beings are in this room?" His assistant consulted his datapad. "Currently, 347, sir. And we've had to turn away about 100 more due to capacity limits. 347 beings chose to spend their free time watching someone exercise. It's become quite popular, sir. The humans call it inspirational. Several other species have approached Lieutenant Webb requesting similar training programs. The Felnari want to improve their endurance. The Quellan students want to understand human pain tolerance. Even the Vaxid priest withdrew his exorcism request and asked if physical training might help with spiritual discipline." Vrelick watched as Webb and Grakthor performed some kind of elaborate hand-slapping gesture that apparently signified mutual respect among humans, followed by what looked like a crushing hug that probably would have killed a lesser being. The Horthax warrior was laughing, actually laughing, and the sound was being picked up by the audio feed. "I cannot believe this is happening on my station," Vrelick muttered. "Sir, with respect, I think it's rather wonderful," Tep said quietly. "When was the last time you saw species from 20 different worlds all gathered peacefully, celebrating together?" The administrator had to admit his assistant had a point. The observation deck was a mix of forms and sizes, all focused on the display with expressions of wonder, excitement, and admiration. A Quilnari was explaining something to a Sarkellian, using gestures to demonstrate running form. 2 Felnari were taking notes on datapads. A group of young Micron were placing bets on what the humans would do next. His communicator buzzed again. This time it was a priority message from the Galactic Council. Vrelick's heart sank as he opened it, expecting another crisis. Instead, he found a commendation. "Station Administrator Vrelick, the Council has been monitoring the cultural exchange program you facilitated between humans and other species. We're pleased to report that your station has seen a 73% decrease in interspecies conflicts over the past 3 weeks, the highest increase in cross-cultural social activities in Council records, and numerous requests from other stations asking to implement similar programs. Your initiative in turning a potential diplomatic incident into a unifying event is exemplary. Well done." Vrelick read the message 3 times. Then he looked at Tep. "Did I just receive praise for something I didn't actually plan?" "Leadership is about recognizing opportunities, sir," his assistant said diplomatically. "You could have shut down the human training sessions. Instead, you turned them into educational events. I was trying to reduce complaints through exposure therapy, and it worked brilliantly." Down in the training bay, Webb was setting up some kind of equipment while Grakthor recovered. The human called out to the observation windows, "Hey everyone, thanks for coming out today. Since we've got such a great crowd, I thought we'd demonstrate some partner exercises. Grak here has been an amazing student, and I think it'd be cool to show how different species can work together to achieve fitness goals. Anyone interested in volunteering?" The observation deck went silent. Vrelick could feel the tension, the uncertainty. Then, slowly, a Quellan student raised one of her multiple limbs. I would like to try, she said, her voice amplified by the communication system. If it's safe. Webb's face lit up. Absolutely safe. What's your name? Lysara. Great to meet you, Lysara. Come on down to Bay 7. We'll start with something simple, work within your comfort zone. Anyone else? 3 more hands, tentacles and appendages went up. Within minutes there were 7 volunteers making their way to the training bay, including, to Vrelick's absolute shock, his own assistant, Tep. What are you doing? The Quilnari looked back at him, antenna standing tall. Participating in interspecies cultural exchange, sir. You should try it sometime. I hear humans have a saying, don't knock it until you try it. Vrelick watched helplessly as his orderly, predictable station continued its transformation into something he didn't quite recognize. The volunteers entered the bay, and Webb's voice took on an encouraging, patient tone as he explained basic exercises and safety protocols. Remember, folks, this isn't a competition. This is about pushing your own personal limits, not matching someone else's. We're all built different, evolved under different conditions. The goal is improvement, not perfection. Ready? Let's start with some basic stretches. The human led them through a series of movements that looked simple but clearly required coordination. Grakthor moved among the volunteers, offering advice and demonstrating proper form. The Horthax warrior, who 3 weeks ago had been demanding an investigation into human biology, was now assisting with cross-species fitness training. Vrelick's communicator buzzed yet again. He was starting to hate that sound. This time it was from Dr. Helith, the station's chief medical officer, a Threnoid whose species was known for their diagnostic abilities. Administrator, I'm sending you a report on the physiological changes I've observed in non-human species participating in the human exercise programs. Let me guess, Vrelick said tiredly. Mass injuries? Stress fractures? Cardiovascular failures? Actually, quite the opposite. The doctor's tone was puzzled. Improved cardiovascular efficiency across the board, better muscle tone, enhanced bone density in species capable of such adaptation, reduced stress hormones. Several participants report improved mood and sleep quality. Honestly, it's remarkable. The humans seem to have stumbled onto wellness techniques that work across multiple biologies. That's impossible. Each species has unique physiological requirements. I'm sending you the data now. The common factor appears to be controlled stress followed by recovery. The humans call it progressive overload. By gradually increasing difficulty, the body adapts. It's a principle that seems to apply universally, though implementation varies by species. Vrelick pulled up the data on his personal display. Charts, graphs, metabolic readings, all showing measurable improvements. Beings who'd been sedentary for years were now actively exercising. Social bonds were forming between species who'd previously had minimal interaction. Even the station's overall atmosphere felt different, more energized. This is absurd, he muttered. 3 weeks ago, 7 species filed complaints because they were terrified of human capabilities. Now everyone wants to train like them. Dr. Helith made a sound that might have been laughter. Fear often masks curiosity. Administrator, once people realized the humans weren't dangerous, just different, that curiosity emerged. And the humans, I must say, have been excellent ambassadors. Lieutenant Webb in particular has a gift for making exercise accessible and fun. Down in the training bay, Webb was leading the volunteers through something he called jumping jacks. The sight of 7 different body types all attempting the same coordinated movement would have been comical if it weren't so oddly touching. Some struggled more than others, but everyone was trying, and the humans were offering nothing but encouragement and helpful corrections. Fun, Vrelick repeated. They've made voluntary physical suffering fun. Isn't that the human way? The doctor asked. From what I understand of their history, they've been doing that for millennia. Finding joy in challenge, community, and shared struggle. It's actually rather beautiful if you think about it. After the call ended, Vrelick remained at the observation deck watching. He told himself it was administrative oversight, making sure nothing went wrong, but truthfully, he was curious. The session lasted another hour. By the end, all 7 volunteers looked exhausted but pleased. Lysara, the Quellan student, was discussing anatomy with Webb, comparing muscle structures and asking about human adaptations. Tep was talking with Grakthor about incorporating exercise into daily routines. The others were clustered around various pieces of equipment, trying to understand their functions. When the session ended and the participants filed out, many of the observers remained, chatting among themselves. Plans were being made, friendships forming. Vrelick overheard one conversation where a Sarkellian was inviting a Felnari to try swimming in the new aquatic facility that had just been completed. The swimming pool, filled with dihydrogen monoxide, that humans had convinced the council was perfectly safe for recreational use, which according to Dr. Helith's reports, several non-human species were now enjoying because it provided low-impact full-body exercise. Vrelick's world had been turned upside down and somehow, everyone seemed happier for it. His communicator buzzed one more time. He considered throwing it out an airlock but answered instead. Lieutenant Webb's face appeared, slightly flushed from exercise but grinning. "Hey, Administrator. Sorry to bother you, but I wanted to run something by you. Pun not intended." "What is it, Lieutenant?" "So we've been getting a lot of interest in the training programs, right? And I've been thinking maybe we could formalize it a bit, like offer certified courses in cross-species fitness training. We've got some humans on the diplomatic team with backgrounds in physical therapy, sports medicine, that kind of thing. We could teach other species how to safely implement exercise programs for their own people." Vrelick felt that nervous twitch returning. "You want to create an entire curriculum around human exercise methods? Well, not just human methods. That's the cool part. Grakthor has been teaching me about Horthak strength training techniques. They've got this whole philosophy about channeling aggression into productive physical output that's fascinating. And Lasara showed me some Quellan flexibility exercises that I've been incorporating into my warm-ups. We could create something truly interspecies, you know. Take the best from everyone." The human's enthusiasm was infectious and slightly terrifying. "Lieutenant, do you understand the logistical complexity of what you're proposing?" "Oh, totally. That's why I'm asking for your help. You're the administrator, you know how to make things happen on a station-wide scale. Plus, I figure it'd look great on your record. Pioneering interspecies wellness programs, building bridges through fitness, all that diplomatic stuff." Vrelick wanted to refuse. He wanted to explain that his job was maintaining order, processing reports, handling complaints, not revolutionizing how species interacted through voluntary physical exertion. But he looked around the observation deck, at the beings still lingering, still talking, still excited about what they'd witnessed. "Send me a formal proposal," he heard himself saying. "Include curriculum outlines, safety protocols, resource requirements, and projected outcomes. I'll review it and present it to the council." Webb's grin widened. "Seriously? That's awesome. Thank you, sir. You won't regret this." After the call ended, Vrelick turned to find Tep standing beside him, somehow having returned from the training bay without him noticing. "Proud of you, sir," his assistant said. "I haven't done anything except enable chaos. You've enabled progress. There's a difference." Vrelick looked back at the training bay, now empty except for Webb and Grakthor, who were organizing equipment and talking like old friends. A human and a Horthax, species from completely different evolutionary paths, bonding over shared sweat and mutual respect. "Tep, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sir. Why did you volunteer? You've never expressed interest in physical training before." The Quilnari's antennae drooped slightly, a gesture of vulnerability. "Honestly, I was tired of being afraid. Watching the humans, seeing what they could do, it was intimidating. But then I realized they weren't showing off. They were just being themselves, and inviting us to be ourselves too, to push our limits, whatever those limits might be. I wanted to know what that felt like. And it felt good, sir. Difficult, exhausting, but good. I understand now why the humans do it. That sense of accomplishment when you do something you didn't think you could. It's addictive." Vrelick nodded slowly. He'd spent his entire career avoiding unnecessary challenges, maintaining the status quo, keeping things comfortable and predictable. Maybe that was about to change. "Tep, clear my schedule for tomorrow morning." "Sir, I'm going to attend one of Lieutenant Webb's training sessions. As a participant." His assistant's antennae shot straight up in surprise. "Really? If I'm going to approve this proposal and advocate for it to the council, I should understand it firsthand. Plus, I've developed this stress twitch that Dr. Helith says exercise might help with." He paused. "Also, if I'm being honest, watching everyone else challenge themselves while I hide in my office feels cowardly. I think that's very brave, sir. I think it's very foolish. But humans have taught me something over these past few weeks." Vrelick's skin rippled through thoughtful shades of blue. Sometimes foolish and brave are the same thing. The next morning, Vrelick found himself standing in Training Bay 7, wearing what the humans called athletic wear specially fabricated for his physiology. The bay was set to standard gravity, thankfully, and Lieutenant Webb was approaching with that characteristic energetic stride. "Administrator Vrelick, so glad you decided to join us. We're going to start easy, work on basic cardiovascular health and flexibility. Nothing crazy, I promise." "Lieutenant, I've seen your definition of easy. It involves running in gravity that should crush bones. Webb laughed. That's advanced easy. This is beginner easy. Trust me, by the end of this you'll feel great. Or dead. Definitely not dead. I've got a perfect safety record, and I intend to keep it. The session began with what Webb called a warm-up, which involved more physical activity than Vrelick typically experienced in a full day. But the human was patient, offering modifications for his tentacled physiology, encouraging without pushing too hard, and somehow making the whole experience feel less like torture and more like exploration. Halfway through, Vrelick realized something shocking. He was enjoying himself. When the session ended, he was exhausted. His tentacles felt like overcooked quellen noodles, and his skin had cycled through more colors than he knew he was capable of producing. But he also felt energized in a way he couldn't quite explain. "How do you feel?" Webb asked, offering him a container of water. Vrelick drank deeply before responding. "Like I've been physically assaulted by my own inadequacy. Yeah, that's normal. Give it a few hours though. Your body will release all kinds of feel-good chemicals once the initial shock wears off. It's biology's way of rewarding you for the effort. Humans are strange beings, Lieutenant. We get that a lot." Webb grinned. "But hey, you did great for your first session. Really great. Most people can't make it through the full routine on their first try." Vrelick felt an unfamiliar sensation. It took him a moment to identify it as pride. "Thank you, Lieutenant. I'll be reviewing your proposal this afternoon. Expect approval by end of day." "Seriously? Seriously. You've convinced me. Not through arguments or data, but through demonstration. If a sedentary administrator like myself can find value in this, then it has merit." As he left the training bay still wobbly but satisfied, Vrelick's communicator buzzed. He expected another crisis, another complaint, another impossible situation requiring his attention. Instead, it was a message from the Galactic Council's Cultural Committee. They'd heard about the training programs and wanted to visit the station to observe and potentially implement similar initiatives across the Council worlds. Vrelick stopped in the corridor, reading the message twice to make sure he understood. His station, his previously unremarkable administrative posting, was about to become a model for interspecies cooperation. All because a human decided to go for a run in high gravity and everyone else was too curious to look away. He sent a quick response confirming the Council's visit, then made his way back to his office. There was work to be done, proposals to approve, logistics to plan, but for the first time in years he felt excited about it. Tep was waiting with the usual stack of reports, but his antennae were vibrating with amusement. "How was your session, sir?" "Exhausting, humbling, and surprisingly rewarding. Will you be going back?" Vrelick considered the question. Every rational part of his brain said no. He had responsibilities, a station to run, countless administrative tasks that didn't involve voluntary physical suffering, but he remembered that feeling of accomplishment, the way Webb had celebrated his completion of the routine, the sense of having pushed past his own limitations. "Yes," he said finally, 3 times per week as Lieutenant Webb recommends. Schedule it. Consider it done, sir." Alone in his office, Vrelick pulled up the security feed from Training Bay 7. The afternoon session was starting and the observation decks were filling up again. Beings from across the galaxy gathering to watch humans do what they did best, push boundaries and invite everyone else to come along for the ride. 6 weeks ago he'd received a complaint about a human running in high gravity. Now he was approving the creation of an interspecies wellness institute that would fundamentally change how beings across the galaxy approached physical health. His communicator buzzed one more time. This time, he smiled as he answered. It was Lieutenant Webb. "Hey, Administrator. Just wanted to give you a heads up. Champion Grakthor just challenged me to a friendly competition next week. 5 times gravity endurance run. We're thinking of making it a charity event. Raise some credits for the station's youth programs. Think that'd be okay?" "Lieutenant, at this point I've learned to expect the unexpected from your species. Yes, it's approved. But please, for the sake of my remaining sanity, try not to break any more biological impossibilities in the process." Webb's laughter echoed through the communicator. "No promises, sir, but I'll do my best." As the call ended, Vrelick leaned back in his chair and allowed himself a moment of reflection. The station had changed. He had changed. All because humans had arrived and refused to accept anyone else's definition of impossible. Tomorrow he'd approve the proposal. Next week he'd probably be managing another spectator event. Next month representatives from other stations would arrive to learn from what they'd built. And in a few years, who knew, maybe the entire galaxy would be running in high gravity, swimming in dihydrogen monoxide, and discovering that the limits they'd accepted their entire lives were just suggestions waiting to be challenged. All because one human went for a morning jog and everyone else was curious enough to watch. Vrelic's skin settled into a contented shade of green. He pulled up his schedule, added his thrice-weekly training sessions, and started drafting his report to the council. The title wrote itself, Interspecies Wellness Through Shared Physical Challenge, How Humans Taught Us to Run Toward Our Limits Instead of Away from Them. It was going to be a bestseller. He could feel it, and somewhere in Training Bay 7, humans were running, aliens were watching, and the impossible was becoming routine. Just another day on Station Kepler 2247. Just another day in a galaxy that was learning to keep up with humanity.